You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Hey everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist, guitarist, and vocalist Trevor James.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I've been a big fan for pretty much since I started playing bass. I've been following the whole journey, and even at NAMM, and stuff like that. So it's definitely an honor to be part of this.
Thank you. And you're talking to us from a random place.
Right.
We'll touch base a little bit about that, but let's take a step back. Tell us, how did you get started on bass and playing music?
Well, I grew up around a lot of music. My father, he's a singer, and he was one of the winners of Star Search back in 1986. From then on, when I was born, I was always constantly around, through the house, listening to Motown music, listening to, anywhere from just jazz standards to Gino Vanelli. So I had a big influence with all types of genres of music. But how I got started in playing bass, it's a funny story because I've always wanted to play bass. And I remember when I was a young kid going into a music shop and seeing these basses. So they were all Fenders on a wall, and they were like, the classic seafoam green, the cherry red. And from then on out, I'm like, I want to play bass. So by the time high school came around freshman year of high school, I was playing guitar. I was playing, a couple months of guitar. Wasn't that good. And there was a couple guitar players in the class that at the time I thought were really, really good. So I overhear the teacher say, boy, we've got all these guitar players. We don't have a bass player. And I just kind of volunteered myself. And I had an old bass at home, an off-brand bass a cousin gave me. And I just said, I can play bass. And they were like, okay, great. We've got a bass player. And I went home not knowing how to play bass. I didn't even know how to tune a bass guitar. I told my guitar teacher, hey, it looks like I'm going to be playing bass from now on. He's like, well, I can teach you some things, but we'll just go from there. And literally that's how I started. And I think I was 13 when I started playing bass. And from then on out, it was meant to be. I couldn't pick a better instrument to start on.
As you were taking classes for guitar, did you pursue any further studies to develop your bass playing?
Yeah, so once I volunteered myself to play bass, I put the guitar down. And I was solely a bass player. I had a private teacher that at a little local guitar store, and he wasn't a bass player, but he knew some bass chops and techniques, just enough to kind of get me by. From then on out, I was progressing a lot quicker because this was so new. It was just like I was soaking up like a sponge. So I would go to these jam sessions in LA to sit in with like Andrew Goucher and Gordon Campbell, and they would kind of took me under their wing and brought me in and, kind of taught me the ropes of bass playing and just studying everyone and going to Victor Wooten clinics. That was a big, big inspiration, just to break it down to a teaching standpoint, to have you understand what the purpose of bass really is and not to get nervous when you hit a wrong note. So the bass, I was just soaking up knowledge like insane.
Anytime you have a chance to listen to Victor, you always come back inspired.
Oh yeah.
Going, I want to do this more.
What he was like, the thing that I still to this day that I use, he always says you're never more than a half step away from a right note.
That's right.
When he first said that, I was like, I think 14 or 15. And when he said that and I played, I was like, wow. Like, it was life-changing. It was like I could not hit a wrong note from then on out. If I hit a note that was out of the chord phrasing or whatever, and I just slide down, it made that note completely disappear. And I really took that and capitalized on that. And I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things that I took from his teaching. From now, it's like just passing notes pretty much now. He's an incredible teacher. You always feel uplifted when you hear his clinics.
From what I'm understanding, you got playing on kind of the LA scene.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, and so I was definitely blessed to be around tons of musicians. Even, when my father would have his own shows, he would have musicians over rehearsing. So I'm able to be this little kid sitting around and seeing how everything works, how everyone's, arranging music, how everyone's taking, different takes and different parts. And so I was definitely fortunate to be around that. And then being in the LA scene when I got old enough to kind of hang out with some of the more experienced cats, it was an eye opener, just to see how they're playing, to see them up close, because for so long I was watching them on YouTube, and to actually see them in person, see like Hadrian play when he first came out to LA, and to see that, and Marcus Miller and all these guys that would come through and just sit in. It's just like, wow, I just like watched 10 of your concerts online, and now I'm like face to face with you, and to realize that they're just really genuine, cool guys that, they just like playing music. That's I think was the biggest thing for me, is that they were just really down to earth guys. Because when you see these guys that tour with so many artists, you think that, they might have their head in the clouds, but they welcome me in like, oh yeah, I can hear the potential and the growth. Come hang around with us. Yeah. And so that was a great thing about growing up in LA. You had a lot of opportunities to see a lot of music.
Gotcha. Usually the ones that are a little harder to reach are the guitar players, which draws us into you also are playing guitar.
Right. Okay. So going into guitar, so like I said, I started out guitar. That was the main thing. Like my inspirations when I was playing was Carlos Santana, John Mayer, Prince, and Jimi Hendrix. I just wanted to turn up the distortion and just shred. Yeah. And then that's when I got into bass. But then coming back to guitar, I realized, just kind of doing some studying around of how to break out as an artist and how to sing. It's so much easier playing guitar and singing and coming out that way, being a singer-songwriter, than a bass. Bass is kind of, unfortunately, still overlooked as a solo instrument in a more of a mainstream atmosphere. When they think of a bass player that's a solo artist, they think of more jazz fusion, Thundercat kind of vibe. But with guitar, I felt like I had more opportunities to expand different genres. I can play rock, or I can make it very poppy, and getting inspiration from like John Mayer and people like that have incredible chops, some of the most insane tones and everything, but can still write songs that the average person can understand and the average listener can vibe to, but in a jam session setting, they can still rock out, and you're like, wow, he's got chops. And so guitar was always in my back pocket, but I just was so focused on performing with other artists, like going on tour with other artists, that I never really focused on, I need to start breaking out as an artist, and let me get back into the guitar, because this is I felt like the only way that I could really express my sound a little bit further. That was the guitar when the guitar came back into play.
Well, and a lot of the most recent things I've seen, earlier this year, you released a single, Maxine. Yes. I saw some videos from the Jam in the Van.
Right, yeah. That was, that was a really cool thing. And it was one of those things like, hey, I switched to guitar, and now I'm starting to get all of these different looks as a guitar player rather than a bass player. Bass player was kind of more of like session guy, touring with other artists, but guitar was more of like a front man
gotcha.
Vibe,
Well, and do you find it makes you more demanding on your bass player? Because I noticed the guy in the back, it looked like he had some Sims pickups lit up back there.
Right, yeah, he's got, it's, the funny thing is, I've been playing bass for about maybe 13, 14 years, and with good musicians, and it's tough to find a bass player that is kind of on the same level, because I play bass on all of my songs and everything. I never have anyone else play for me, so to have someone come in and play what my lines, it was a challenge, because I try to find a bass player that has a good tone, that's not too busy but not too just keeping it in the box. And my friend that plays bass, Lawrence Chadley, incredible bass player, he brought all those cool tones to it. Like I said, very tough to find someone when you're your own critique and you're like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to sound, that kind of thing. But he's got his like MIDI pickups and all this crazy cool pedals that he really blends into the sound and kind of gives it a little bit more push to even when I wrote it.
And currently you're getting ready because you're playing on board a cruise ship.
Right. So I've been performing on ships. I started actually performing, first time I performed on a ship, I was 14. So my father, is the headliner singer, and I'm his musical director and bass player. So for the past 8 years now, wherever he goes, I go. So we're considered guest entertainers or fly-ons. We come on for about 4 days. We do the show either that day that we get on, have about a hour to 2 hour rehearsal with the orchestra that's there. It's like a 9-piece orchestra. And we rehearse about 2 hours, do the show that night, 2 shows that night, and then we're hanging around for the rest of the time. We get off and we fly to another ship right after that. So that's another thing that's given me a lot of experience is being with these other musicians, because you got to have your sight reading, on point, and being around these musicians that don't know anything about the music before we get there, and we just have a little bit of time to kind of run this stuff and hit a solid show later on that night. And it's been great. I've learned a lot of guys have showed me the ropes of being a musical director, kind of taking charge, and I feel like that's helped my playing and even the career that I'm pursuing now to be more in charge instead of just kind of sitting back and brushing things off.
It's a nice way, I think, to get a taste for the cruise circuit, because I've chatted with quite a few of the bass players that are on board numerous ships. They have a real, I call them like Swiss Army knife kind of existence, because they can be playing the show at night, or they can be in the foyer doing a mini show.
Right, exactly.
And they, a lot of times, especially with the bass players, they can't even turn it up too high because it upsets the seniors, And I'm kind of like, dude, can't you turn up your amp a little bit more? And he's like, man, I'd really like to, but
that's the truth right there. It's the guys that are on there for like 6 to 9 months. It's tough because they can't be themselves. They can't play loud. Sometimes they have to just stay in the pocket. Don't try to explore. Don't add any pedals. It's a set that they've got to follow.
Oh yeah.
And that's it. And it's a good thing, and it also can be a bad thing, because you start to get bored, you start to lose your chops. Then you just don't approach music the same way. You're not inspired, and they have its downfalls. Thankfully, in the position that I'm in, I don't have to deal with that, since they have us come on. I crank it up as loud as I want, and I've gotten the guys in the band, they're so used to someone that might be playing a little quieter. And so when I come, I've blown a couple amps, because the amp isn't used to 6 months of playing at like 5. And I come and I'm like 12 o'clock, almost 1 o'clock. And I'm cranking it up. And there's been a couple of times where, I'd say, hey, the speaker's busted. And they have to go get another speaker out and bring it up. Because they do have to play much softer than on land. Even for drummers, they'll have the shield up and they're like, oh, he plays really loud. And I listen, I'm like, that's not really loud.
Yeah.
But you got to deal with it.
Totally. Gear-wise, when you're playing bass, because I know with the guitar stuff, but how do you get your bass sound?
So I've been with Kiesel Guitars for about, I think 6 years now. The tone of the bass pretty much speaks for itself, because when I'm playing, I normally play at 12 o'clock. Like everything on the settings are all at 12, and the bass really just kicks. I used to, before I was with Kiesel, I had a 5-string Fender Marcus Miller that my cousin gave me, and that was my main bass. And it's an incredible bass, but I always found no matter where I would go, I couldn't get my tone every time. If I'm sitting in with someone really quickly, I'm constantly adjusting the amp, and by the time I'm done adjusting it, the song's halfway done, and it's time to pack up. But with Kiesel Guitars, it's just been incredible. Like no matter what amp I play through, I always get that same tone, and it's definitely their pickups. I play with the standard Kiesel pickups. I haven't switched anything out. I really don't play with too many pedals. I do have a Boss GT10 with all the crazy sounds, but I don't, with the type of music that I play when I'm on the road, I don't get a chance to use a lot of it. So it's just my bass. And then thankfully, a lot of the ships have Gallic and Kruger amps. So that's been like my main tone. That's my staple. I would say GK and then Hartkey. Those are my two favorite amps for my particular tone. So I can get a good good variety of tones. And with my bass, it's like the precision and then the jazz pickup. And one of them I have is got the humbucker, so it gives a little bit more fatter sound. And the music that I play is a lot of 60s, 70s kind of music, so I want that mid-rangey, deep tone, but you can still hear the clarity of the strings. All of my basses have that. Each of them have their little different tones that are slightly different, but for the most part, every time I plug in, you can tell, okay, this is my tone. It's really just the bass. I've never really been one of those guys that has a lot of pedals. Even for guitar, it's just reverb and distortion. I feel like that's all you need. And for bass, if you want a little compressor or I have an octave pedal, Aguilar, that you don't really need. I play a 5-string, so it's you don't really need that extra octave unless you want to get that really synthy kind of sound. For the most part, just it's my 5-string. That's what I play. I have 6 strings and a 4, but I feel like in today's music, 5 is pretty much the standard now.
Because you're not using a lot of effects, strings can play an important part. What are you using as far as strings?
So for strings, for the longest, I was using DR strings. I was using the signature Marcus DRs, but I found that they just didn't last long. It's the kind of pace that I was playing constantly. They would last maybe a month, and so it was kind of expensive having to keep buying strings. And I went to elixirs, and elixirs are great. They last forever, but they just wasn't giving the tone. So I switched to Dunlops, and Dunlops were great, and I loved them. And then when they came out with the Marcus Miller Super Brights, that's the stainless steel. I had to get them, and that's what I've been rocking with for a long time, because they're really bright, but my basses are very bass heavy, so I can really roll off that treble on my bass, and I can still get this punchy clarity, but still maintain that nice round warmth. And so for the past year now, I've been using the Dunlop Marcus Miller signature set, and they last long, and they got a nice clear pop, and that's all I want is a nice clarity where you can hear the strings, you can hear every little nuance. Because I feel like when I play, I'm a little bit more percussive when I'm playing. A lot of ghost notes, and I want all those to come in, in between the kick drum, when the drummer's playing. And I feel like these strings really make that happen. For guitar, I play with Ernie Balls. I just started. With guitar, it's such a trial and error, picking certain strings, but I find with bass, it's just like still trial and error, but once you find that right string, it's the same every time.
Sure.
And so the Dunlops are what I play with. I do have flat rounds, black Labella Black Beauties on one of my other basses to get that nice vintage kind of tone to them. But for the most part, the Dunlops, that's my go-to.
I know you're busy with your cruise stuff right now, but looking ahead, what projects and things are you looking to do?
Well, right now, since I just released my album, Maxine, that came out the 13th of this month, I'm working on trying to get more shows now. I've had a couple of my own shows. I'd say maybe like 5 under my belt right now, but hopefully for the future to be able to do some festivals, to really start getting my name out in front of a live crowd. Because I've got fans that see me online, that follow my YouTube and Instagram, but I want to build up more of a live fan base, because it's one thing to have 7,000 people following you, plus people following you, but then when you do a show and you have only 5-10 people come out, it's like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So hopefully I've been definitely reaching out to a couple festivals just to see if I can get on board, and then even hopefully opening for artists, being an opener and just getting the experience of that aspect, because I've had a lot of experience performing behind artists that open for other people, but to be able to be the artist is a definitely new step, because not only you have to organize everything, especially when you have management, you have to organize everything, you got to get the songs together, rehearsals, make sure people come out to the show. That's all so new to me. I've been so used to just sitting back and, okay, is this the song you want me to learn? Okay, cool, I'll learn it. What time I got to be there? All right, cool, I'll be there. But now breaking out as an artist, it's a lot more work, but it's fun. So hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to perform a lot more in the States and even hopefully in Europe. And then I'm slowly getting into the buzz of starting to write again. When I finish an album or when I finish writing, it's like I dump all the creativity out. But now it's slowly coming back. Maybe to have something for the end of summer, maybe release one more song, kind of like a summer jam that everyone can think about all their crazy summer times and be able to, chill out with this song.
Well, and if people want to stay on top of what you're doing and find out, where's the best place for them to look?
The best place is my Instagram, which is at Mr_International, and then 3 underscores after that. That's probably the closest to instant stuff that people will get, because I'm always on there. I mean, you'll go on there and it'll say, this was posted an hour ago, this was posted, and I'm always doing live streams. And so Instagram is always the main source of being able to reach me instantly. I used to have Facebook, and I used to have it for music stuff, but then Facebook kind of got a little crazy with a lot of, just random people adding me and just a lot of nonsense. So Instagram is the main source of contact now. I wish I had a website, but I found that every time someone would meet me, they would never go to my website. They would just say, hey, what's your number? What's your social media? Are you on Twitter? Yeah. I am on Twitter as well. It's just Mr. Trevor James. That's my Twitter handle. And I'm on there. I'm starting to get on there a lot more now, just putting little things out. It's pretty much, I mainly share what I have on Instagram to Twitter. And
Sure.
Once in a while, I'll do a live stream just to kind of have more of a one-on-one and be able to talk to people and see where they are in the world and whatnot.
That is a whole evolving scene. And, if you're going to have a website, the whole issue of maintenance and keeping it fresh and doing all that, it's a whole project. And even with social media, we go back as far. We had our MySpace page,
Right.
and you kind of go, yeah, that's pretty much, it's still active, it's alive,
Right.
but it's not like we do nearly as much as what we used to. Facebook has evolved, so Instagram, Twitter, all that.
Yeah. It's like it's one of those things. As a musician, it's you have to, if you want to try to get any kind of recognition or recognize, you have to stay on social media so much. I call it a business instead of my Instagram being just random pictures of stuff. I kind of try to make it as a business where
Sure.
it's not as much as advertisements, but more of like a magazine. Someone can go on there and say, oh wow, this is where he is today, or this is what's going on, and it can be challenging sometimes, because there are times when you're sitting around, you're like, gosh, I don't know what to post. I don't want to bore people. I already posted this last week. It looks exactly the same. And so it's really one of those things that you have to keep up. But it's a great way to put things out instantly. Be able to put a video up for 60 seconds and people share it or tag people in it. It's a cool way to do things. At times it is saturated a lot, but it's a good way to get your music going.
The crazy thing is that with the reach, with the internet, you've got worldwide reach, and you just never know that there's going to be somebody that sees it or hears it and goes, hey, I think I'm gonna connect with this guy. We'll put something together and get something going. So
yeah, and that's a lot that has happened. It's like you build a whole music community with people that you've never even met, but you feel like you've met them because you're constantly seeing their stuff, you're constantly communicating, and it's a great way for me, because I in all my travels doing the ships and whatnot, I do get a chance to meet a lot of people from different countries. So if I'm ever somewhere where they live, I just message them, and then they're able to take me around or take me to cool music spots or recommend things. So it's a great way to connect with people that you wouldn't be able to connect with normally. Before it used to be like a pen pal, you'd have to write a long letter and mail it. You wait a month to get another response back. But now it's just like, hey, I'm in your town. It's like, oh, cool, I'll come pick you up at the airport.
Nice.
It's one of those.
Trevor, we appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule, and we don't want you to miss the ship's movement. Folks, stay on top of what Trevor James is doing. You've seen him live on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks for bassing out with us here on bassmusicianmagazine.com.